Well, good evening and welcome to the Board of Education meeting for Greeley-Evans School District 6. Today is the 14th day of June, 2021. This meeting will now come to order. Will you please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Crane, will you call the roll for us, please?
Mr. Hafley?
Present.
Mrs. Mash?
Present.
Mr. Mathews?
Present.
Mrs. Mueller?
Present.
Ms. Pappas?
Present.
Mrs. Solis?
Present.
Mr. Talley?
Present.
7 members present.
Thank you, Ms. Crane. Well, we are into summer and glad to be into summer, and you can certainly feel that if you're in the room with us, that we have the air conditioner cranked up. So we haven't had as many things going on in our school district, but we have some wonderful things that are happening tonight. And one of those is we will be recognizing some state champions, and we are glad that you are joining us here tonight and anxiously awaiting that presentation. But also we've been making some decisions about what's going to occur next. And so I am proud to and pleased to announce that beginning on Wednesday, we will no longer require those who are under 12 and those who are over 12 and have been vaccinated to wear a mask in our buildings. And it's been a long time getting to this point where we believe that our buildings are safe. And so we're excited to be able to tell our students and our parents and our teachers this exciting news. So it took us seemed like several hours, but at least an hour of deliberation to come to some consensus around that decision. And we're excited for not just for the decision, but for everything that means for our school district moving forward, that we're entering a new phase as respect to this virus, and we are looking forward to this upcoming school year. Those are all the announcements I have. This meeting, we will approve a budget. And because we do approve the budget, and I would just, before I make this announcement, say it is one of the best pieces of information that we put out as a school district. If you want to know anything about this, an in-depth look at this school district, that budget is a great reference. It will tell you just about anything you want to know about our school district. And so I would recommend that if you have any interest in reading through the school district's budget, that you check that out. But because this is a budget meeting and we are proposing a budget, there is some special language that I need to read here. And so I want to welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Education. Today is June 14th, 2021. Today we have scheduled a public hearing of the 2021-2022 budget for Weld County School District 6. Pursuant to Colorado Revised Statute 2244-110, any taxpayer residing in this school district is entitled to register his or her comments on the proposed budget with the Board of Education, either in writing or in person at a public hearing. The proposed budget for the 2021-2022 fiscal year has been posted on the district's website for review. Ms. Crane, are there any persons desiring to speak to the board regarding the proposed budget?
No, there are not.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Crane. We are now to our public participation regarding agenda items. And Ms. Crane, I don't believe anyone's signed up to speak to us tonight.
That's correct.
For those either. And so we're now to our work session report, Ms. Crane.
Board of Education President Michael Mathews began the work session with comments and updates from board members and then proceeded to review the calendar of upcoming events. Superintendent Dr. Deirdre Pilch provided a brief update on the 2021-2022 proposed budget and led the board in a discussion about COVID protocols in the schools and district buildings. The board discussed community engagement and debriefed the work session to conclude.
Thank you, Ms. Crane. We're now to our superintendent's report. So Dr. Pilch, I will hand this to you.
Thank you, President Mathews. I'll just start by sharing how fun it is to see students and parents and coaches in the boardroom tonight. It's great to see you all. You know, we just haven't gotten to see you over the last year as much as we would want to see you. And I'm excited that after Wednesday, those of us who are vaccinated will be able to take our masks down and we'll be able to see our face again. So welcome to all of you who are here tonight. And we won't keep you here very long. We're just pleased to have an opportunity to recognize you and thank you for your dedication to your not only your sports, but your academics as well. I'll also share that we are in full swing with summer school. As you all know, we are in our third week now of summer school with about 2.5 weeks more to go, with just over 20% of our students who are non-charter students in participating in summer school. So we're excited about that. Lots of good activity is taking place in the summer school programs and working hard to make up for some of those losses that occurred as a result of the pandemic over the last year. On the consent agenda tonight, I'll just point out that there are some sizable contracts. This is the time of the year where we renew a lot of our annual contracts, as well as there's some significant and important bond contracts on this agenda tonight. And there's a lot of items because it's our last business meeting of the school year, and we won't officially come back together until mid-August for our next board meeting. So with that, I'll let us get on with our board meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Pilch. Our next item is to approve the agenda.
I move that the Board of Education of Greeley-Evans School District 6 approves the agenda as presented.
Second.
Thank you both. Is there any discussion on the agenda? Hearing none, Ms. Crane.
Mr. Hafley?
Aye.
Mrs. Mash?
Aye.
Mr. Mathews?
Aye.
Mrs. Mueller?
Aye.
Ms. Pappas?
Aye.
Mrs. Solis?
Aye.
Mr. Talley?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you, Ms. Crane. Our next item is the approval, or the adoption rather, of the 2021-2022 budget. And this is an action item.
I move that the Board of Education of Weld County School District 6 approves the proposed budget for the 2021-22 fiscal year. This includes a total appropriation of $565,316,231. The transfer of funds from the general fund and the use of the beginning fund balance were required as presented in the proposed budget document.
Second.
Thank you both. Is there any discussion on this? And maybe perhaps before I do this, Dr., we've had a great, this is a long process in creating a budget. So we've had updates all along as you've been creating it, but got a final update tonight. Is there anything more that you would like to tell us or the public about the budget?
You know, Mr. Mathews, we had a significant conversation in the work session about it. I think the one thing I want to share with the public is that with this budget, because the state has rectified some wrongs, as we've seen them in the School Finance Act and in how students are counted in school districts, and then the revenue that districts receive as a result of how those students are counted. Some of that has been remedied, and as a result, we are seeing a greater increase in our budget than we have seen in past years. And I'm proud to share, as you all know, that much of that will go to increases in pay for our teachers and our other staff in the district. And this keeps us in the market, it keeps us competitive. You all know there's a national teacher shortage, and I'm sure you've seen the changes that districts are making to increase teacher pay and to have incentives, sign-on bonuses and things for teachers. And so we weren't able to do that, but we are excited that our starting teacher's salary will now be over $40,000 in District 6, and we're pleased to be able to offer that to our staff as a result of this funding and of the creative work of staff and board in building this budget. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pilch. Is there any comment, question, or discussion on the budget? Well, hearing none, I would just like to echo Dr. Pilch's gratitude to our staff. It takes, it is a lot of work to put together a budget. Our finance team does an exceptional job of guessing every year what our funding is going to be and where our funding is going to be, and they are amazingly accurate, which allows us to prepare ahead of time and to begin this process even a little bit earlier, perhaps than some other school districts that don't have people quite as talented as our finance team. And so just some thank yous to Ms. Sponsler, Ms. Hydock, and the entire finance team that put this together for us every year. Ms. Creighton, will you give us a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Hafley?
Aye.
Mrs. Mash?
Aye.
Mr. Mathews?
Aye.
Mrs. Mueller?
Aye.
Ms. Pappas?
Aye.
Mrs. Solis? Mr. Talley?
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you, Ms. Creighton. We're now to the recognition of some state champions. And so, Dr. Pilch, I'll give this portion of the meeting to you.
Thank you, President Mathews. And so let's celebrate a little bit and do some recognition. So I'd like to welcome Mr. Bob Billings to the podium, who is our district athletic director, to introduce some folks to you tonight and lead this celebration. And I hope you'll share the good news about Wednesday night and what's upcoming.
I will do that. Mr. Mathews, members of the board, Dr. Pilch, thank you so much. It's great to be here. It's kind of a celebration, as Dr. Pilch said, to actually be in a meeting with lots of people recognizing some great things that happened this year. I'd like to just point out, by the end of this month, through this past year, 31 state championships will have been completed and competed through CHASA's support and the work of a lot of local folks. And I'd really like to give a shout out to all of our athletic directors, coaches, parents, athletic trainers, support workers. It has just been a team effort, and our community has really supported us, supported their students, and in spite of a lot of challenges and continual changes, a lot of great things have happened, and we're going to mention several here tonight. And so to recognize some state champions, first of all, we'd like to recognize the University High 3A POM State Championship group. Unfortunately, they could not get everybody together to join us tonight, but their athletic director, Ryan Wehrman, sends his condolences and appreciates the board's desire to have them present. Their head coach is Gina Haug and assistant coach Caitlin Pankey. So 3A state POM champions this year for the University High Bulldogs. And then one of those athletic directors that I mentioned a moment ago and referred to coaches is one and the same for two-time 3A state champion boys cross-country team from Frontier Academy. And so I'd like to invite Brett Shanklin, who is their athletic director and their head coach, to come up and bring his young men, and I'll allow him to say a few words about their season. Brett was also the 3A cross-country coach of the year. So Brett's done a great job with that program. They've had continual success for many years. So this is one shining example. So Brett, if you'd like to come up and bring these young gentlemen up and introduce them.
District 6 School Board, Dr. Pilch, thank you for bringing us down here this evening and allowing these young student athletes to be recognized in their accomplishments over this past fall with winning the 3A state cross-country state championship. This past fall, obviously, there was a lot of different challenges as we got the school year started. And we really started that training in June, and our theme this year was Row the Boat. We took it from University of Minnesota football. But the great thing about that theme is it worked really well, both with where we were the previous year being state champions and then going into this year, and then also with COVID. So the whole idea of rowing the boat is when you're rowing, your back is towards the future. And in a year like this, you definitely didn't know what was going to happen in the future. At one point, we didn't even know if we were going to be able to have a season or not. You're rowing away from your past. So we were trying to row away from what we had accomplished the previous year. And our focus was on what we were currently doing, so the present. So we were just focusing on the process of getting a little bit better each day. And with the situation that we were given with COVID and all the other different factors, these boys and the rest of their team embraced that wholeheartedly, and that led to a lot of success over the course of the season. They were able to create bonds with each other, still able to put the work in, and at the end of the day, on October 17th, they were able to come back with a state championship. And so I will let them introduce themselves with first and last name and what grade they were in this past year. So it's been a great honor coaching them along with all the other team members on that team.
Hi, I'm Silas Chambers, and I just graduated a couple weeks ago.
Hello, my name is Justin Quammen, and likewise, I graduated a few weeks ago.
Hello, my name is Sebastian Groom, and I was a junior last year. Thanks so much for having us.
Hello, I'm Dylan Dieterle, and I'm an incoming senior, former junior, and yeah, thank you for having us.
Hi, my name is Noah Baca, and I was also a junior this past year. Thank you for having us.
My name is Abazad Fanning, and I was a sophomore last year.
Awesome. Well, we have one potential state champion in the wings, hopefully. Wanted to let you know Wednesday night, Northridge is, the girls soccer program is the #1 seed in the 4A state bracket. They'll play Wednesday night, 7 p.m. at District 6 Soccer Stadium. There is a $7 charge for adults, $5 for students. But we'd love to have you out, and when they win that match, they'll play sometime likely on Saturday. So wishing the Northridge Lady Grizzlies a lot of luck as they make their way through the upcoming state 4A girls soccer championships.
Thank you, Mr. Billings. I just want to say a few words because you guys, I was a high school principal at 2 different high schools for over 10 years, and state championships do not come easily. They're few and far between, actually, for any given high school. So to be members of a state championship team and to have the kind of wins that you young men have experienced, and to have the coach that you have who has led you there is, I just want you to know how remarkable it really is. And I know that because I was a high school principal for a long time and probably saw in 10 years out of my school maybe 3 state championships that whole time. So it's a big darn deal. Congratulations, you guys. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Billings. Thank you to our cross-country state champions. Thanks for being here tonight. You guys are, you are welcome to stay for the rest of our meeting. There are some fascinating pieces to it, but you're also welcome. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Pappas, you wanted to...
This is what happens. He just ignores me telling you you can go. I did not mean to interrupt you. I also wanted to congratulate you, but the 2 graduating seniors, yes. I just am so glad that you have, you're dry now. Your graduation was a graduation to go down in the history books. For those of you that don't know, when they received their diplomas, it was pouring rain, thunder, and I just have to tell you how great you all were at that graduation, and congratulations for that, as well as your accomplishment in cross country. So thank you. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, sorry. I'm easily distracted, as you know. So thank you guys for being here tonight, and you are welcome to leave at this point if you so choose. We are going to move on to, as they're leaving, our consent agenda, and this is an action item that will require a motion.
I move that the Board of Education of Greeley-Evans School District 6 approves items as presented on the consent agenda and authorizes the officers to sign any and all contracts.
Second.
Thank you both. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda?
Mr. Mathews, I have something. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Mr. Talley. Welcome. We're now getting a visual. Mr. Talley is serving his 2 weeks in the National Guard in South Dakota, and that's where he is right now. So those of you who can see him, just know that's that's where he is and why he's joining us virtually. So go ahead, Mr. Talley.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, I apologize if it's loud. I got trucks moving around our tent and things. But could we pull the ABC contract?
Yes, sir. We will pull the ABC contract from the consent agenda. And just for our public, consent agenda are the things that we agree do not require discussion. And so any board member may pull any piece of the consent agenda at any meeting. And so Mr. Talley has pulled one piece of our consent agenda, which if you are following our agenda, you know is pretty lengthy tonight. So he's pulled one. Is there any other discussion on the consent agenda? Hearing none, Ms. Crane, will you give us a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Haefele?
Aye.
Mrs. Mash?
Aye.
Mr. Mathews?
Aye.
Mrs. Mueller?
Aye.
Ms. Pappas?
Aye.
Mrs. Solis? Mr. Talley?
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you, Ms. Crane. We now need to place as an agenda item that ABC contract. So if someone would please make a motion for that particular agenda item.
I move that we accept the ABC contract as presented.
Second.
Thank you both. Is there any discussion on the ABC contract?
I have a few questions. First question is, I noticed in the contract it does state that, first of all, I want to say ABC has done a phenomenal job with our school district and for our students, providing after-school care and the preschool services. The question I have is around, and there it states the small class sizes and students who may be on an IEP, and it says that the class sizes, the IEP, the general ed class size will not exceed 50%. Is there a reason that we only allow 50% of the class to receive special ed services, or only allow those students, 50% of those students in there? And is there an alternate place for them to go if there's not room in that school, or how does that work?
Thank you, Mr. Talley, for that question. Really, the reason for that is so that it is not intended that ABC be the primary provider for special education services. We also provide a separate preschool program for our students who are who require special education services, especially those students with significant needs at our preschool site on West 20th. So the other piece to this is we try to, in every classroom in the district, unless a child is actually in need of a self-contained environment, we try not to exceed over 50% of the students in any given classroom being students who are on an IEP and receiving special education services.
Thank you for that. One more question. Does this program, does it need to follow the same restrictions or guidelines or rules and policies that we have for our all of our schools in terms of suspensions and expulsions and things like that?
Mr. Gribble, I see you coming in. Do you want to come and take that question for me, sir, or Ms. Gershwin? Mr. Talley, can you restate that question? I feel like these guys joined us to probably answer this question.
Of course. In terms of the disciplinary action, I guess we can just say, is ABC required to follow our district policy for suspensions and expulsions?
Yes. Yes, they
awesome.
are.
And what type of oversight is there for the ABC programs around the school or the district?
Oversight as far as a suspension or as far as their academic program?
Yeah, maybe I'll just give an example. So I've had somebody approach me about their student was not allowed to return to one program, which then suspended them or expelled them, I guess you could say, from any other ABC program across Greeley-Evans. And so how do we deal with that as a school district? Are we allowing any sort of expulsion hearing or anything like that so we don't bar a student from returning?
Yeah, I'm not aware of any extended suspensions or expulsions from our preschool program. If a decision is made regarding their after-school care program and not being able to participate there, that's something that's outside of our oversight. But there's been no expulsions and really little to no, I would almost argue, no suspensions in our preschool program. That's kind of against the philosophy of our preschool program as well as our CPP agreements.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
And the integrated 50% question, you guys answered that one already?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Is there something you would like to add?
I think as far as that 50%, like the purpose of preschool, one of the main purposes is to create an integrated settings. And so we are very conscious of, monitoring those students who have kind of those intensive learning needs that we're not kind of overstacking classes with kids with the most significant needs, right? And so that's why we monitor that 50% rule. At the beginning of the school year, it's, kind of lower, it grows, but we're constantly monitoring that.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And like I said, I really appreciate the work ABC does. And I know that they do their best with what they have, just like any other educational setting in our country. So thank you for your work and thank you to ABC for all your work.
Any other questions or comments on the motion? Contract. Hearing none, Ms. Crane, will you give us a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Hafley?
Aye.
Mrs. Mash?
Aye.
Mr. Mathews?
Aye.
Mrs. Mueller?
Aye.
Ms. Pappas?
Aye.
Mrs. Solis? Mr. Talley?
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Our next item is a call for elections, and this is also an action item that will require a motion.
I move that the Board of Education of Greeley-Evans School District 6 calls for an election for the purpose of filling vacancies that will occur as current members' terms of office expire, and direct the designated election official to notify the county clerk no later than July 23rd, 2021, that the District 6 will participate in a coordinated election. The designated election official is further directed to publish a call for nominations no later than August 4th, 2021 in the Greeley Tribune.
Second.
Thank you both. I think this one's pretty self-explanatory, but is there any comment or question on this one? All right, well, let's have some elections. Ms. Crane, will you give us a roll call vote?
Mr. Hafley?
Aye.
Mrs. Mash?
Aye.
Mr. Mathews?
Aye.
Mrs. Mueller?
Aye.
Ms. Pappas?
Aye.
Mrs. Solis? Mr. Talley?
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you, Ms. Crane. Our next item is to designate an election official, and so this is also an action item.
I move that the Board of Education of Greeley-Evans School District 6 designates Christina Crane as the district election official and Lindsay Richards as the alternate election official for the November 2021 election.
Second.
Thank you both. Again, another one that's pretty self-explanatory, but any discussion? Hearing none, I will just say, Ms. Crane, you've done an outstanding job as the elections official in the past, and we look forward to you continuing to serve in that capacity.
Thank you.
Will you give us a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Hafley?
Aye.
Mrs. Mash?
Aye.
Mr. Mathews?
Aye.
Mrs. Mueller?
Aye.
Ms. Pappas?
Aye.
Mrs. Solis? Mr. Talley?
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you, Ms. Crane. We're now to some legislative updates, and the legislature's been busy. So, Dr. Filch, I'll give this over to you.
Thank you, and I see legal counsel Nate Fall making his way to the podium, and I'll turn it over to him. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, members of the board, President Mathews, Dr. Pilch. So I will be giving the last legislative update for this legislative session. We know that last week on Tuesday, the legislative session ended. And so today I'm just going to kind of recap some of the major bills that are going to have a pretty significant impact on District 6, as well as go over a little bit about the School Finance Act. So we know we've talked a lot about this, the School Finance Act, everything about it. It's going to be a big boost for District 6. We know that they restored K through 12 funding. They cut the budget stabilization factor nearly in half. And so they brought the budget stabilization factor down to $572 million and bought it down $481.4 million. So that's almost a $500 million buy down of the budget stabilization factor. What that does is it pretty much brings us back to pre-pandemic levels. And so we can expect that that budget stabilization factor will continue to go down in the ensuing years. We also know that the School Finance Act increased the base funding by 2% as required by the Colorado Constitution. This increase was seen across all aspects of funding, including categorical funding. We saw increases that will be seen here in District 6 as well. There were a handful of changes to the school finance formula. They are permanent changes. And first and foremost, the at-risk factor was broadened to include reduced lunch. So just to give you some numbers, in Colorado, there's 295,000 students statewide who are eligible for free lunches, and another 58,000 are eligible for reduced price meals. I don't have the numbers exactly of where District 6 sits, but we can expect to see additional funding for those reduced price students. The school finance formula also added a factor for English language learners. They're going to receive a weight, just like as they would for at-risk students. They can be considered a different category of funding, and that'll be an 8% weight that will be added to English language learners. And we also know that the School Finance Act restored a slew of grant programs. There's this one here of $3.5 million in federal stimulus money to fund career success and concurrent enrollment programs. I don't have my notes with me, but there were a number of programs that were previously cut, grant programs, and they've restored nearly all of them across the board. And last, House Bill 211325, this new interim committee. From what I understand, in 2017 and in 2019, they have tried to bring on an interim committee to review the school finance formula with little success, almost no success. But they're going to do it again. They're going to try to bring in a group together of 4 senators, 4 representatives, and they're going to have an equal party representation. And they're going to try to adjust the school finance formula. The interim committee is also going to look into a wide number of other issues related to school finance. One thing that I do know that they are considering is whether or not to change the at-risk factor from individual students to districts. I know the USDA uses a different calculation, a different proxy to determine at-risk, and that's when they look at the district as a whole. And then they take a percentage based on that and give it weight. I think that that's a great idea and perhaps something that this interim committee will review. Getting into a few past bills, we did talk about all of these, but I just want to briefly go over them with you because they are now law. This first one, House Bill 211317, regulating marijuana concentrates. If you can remember, this is the bill that addresses marijuana concentrates. We talked about a THC product called Shatter. It's an extremely high THC potent drug that has very little regulation. So this bill is going to kind of closely examine those concentrates. And it's also going to close a loophole, which allows medical marijuana users to kind of shop from dispensary to dispensary, and they can kind of max out their daily marijuana limit at one dispensary, and then they can just go to the one next door and max it out again. So this bill will eliminate that practice. This next one, expand cannabis-based medicine at schools. This one did pass. So the first thing that we're going to really be needing to do here in the district is to adopt a policy that allows for the storage, possession, and administration of cannabis-based medicine by school personnel. I know that it was a little bit concerning to have nurses or other school staff members administer medical marijuana to students. But now we're just required by law to at least allow staff members to volunteer to do it. We can't require it, but we certainly need to adopt a policy. I know that CASB is updating their standard policies and forms related to administering medical marijuana. And when those come out, we will adjust our policies to align with CASB. I just want to add, though, that this bill removes discretion from the principal of whether the principal will permit medical marijuana administration for students. Right now, principals have a lot of discretion, and they're not going to have that anymore. So this last one on this slide, House Bill 2121, you know that this is a bill that I was kind of a fan of. And so now Colorado can enter into that interstate compact regarding audiology and speech language pathology services. So I think that we can see an increase in access to those resources moving forward, assuming other states are on board. And then just a few more, House Bill 21-1067, college admission use of national test scores. So now any state university in Colorado, CSU, University of Northern Colorado, University of Colorado, et cetera, are no longer required to accept national state assessments as a entry eligibility criterion. They can look at GPA, they can look at other soft factors such as volunteering or work, any other things that they do. So they're not required to accept national assessment test scores, which I think is going to be a real boost for some students to have access to post-secondary education. Senate Bill 21-202, public school air quality improvement grants. I just want to talk about this briefly because President Mathews asked a few sessions ago about whether or not there are any kind of conditions that kind of come along with getting this money, and there aren't any, as far as I'm aware. So this can just be additional money that the district could use to purchase equipment to improve air quality. I mean, District 6 might not really actually get that much money out of this, but it's additional funding nonetheless. Senate Bill 21-116, prohibit American Indian mascots. This bill requires schools or school districts that don't have an agreement with a nationally recognized tribe, and it prohibits them from using a mascot, and they have to discontinue the use of that mascot. And so I went through every single school in our district, and Shawshing Elementary School does have the Thunderbird. And so I just want to say that the Thunderbird, at least under this law, is an American Indian mascot. So what we're going to need to think about moving forward is whether or not we want to enter into an agreement with the Ute tribe, or if we want to just get a different mascot. But we will need to make that decision by June 1st of 2022. If we fail to do that, it's a $25,000 a month fine for every month that we are not in compliance. So that's definitely something we'll need to think about. This last bill, House Bill 21-1051, public information applicants for public employment. This bill clarifies that a local public government body can name a single finalist for an executive position. Under current law, under CORA, school district is required to release the names of all finalists for a position. Now it just needs to list the one finalist. I know that we have the wonderful Dr. Pilch running the show here in the district right now, so it's not really anything we need to worry about. But moving forward, when those executive positions are up for nomination, that's something to keep in mind. So with that, if you have any questions or comments, I'm happy to take them.
Thank you, Mr. Fall. I do believe we have some questions and comments, at least one. Mr. Hafley.
Mr. Fall, you've been an incredible addition to District 6, and I really appreciate the things that you do, but this legislative update is something that has become much more understandable, and it makes it a lot easier for me to follow, and I greatly appreciate it, so thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? We'll just echo those thanks, Mr. Fall. We appreciate your work on this and keeping us updated.
Thank you.
Our next item is resolution for the sale of bonds, and this is an action item that will need a motion.
I move that the Board of Education of Greeley-Evans School District 6 adopts the resolution for the sale of bonds as attached in full.
Second.
Thank you both. Before we go any further, Mr. Hafley, would you be so kind as to read the public resolution?
Yes. A resolution authorizing the issuance by Weld County School District 6, Weld County, Colorado, of general obligation bonds in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $145 million for the purposes set forth in the ballot issue approved by district voters at the November 2019 election, providing for the payment of the costs of issuance of such bonds, providing for the levy of ad valorem taxes for the payment of such bonds, providing the forms of such bonds and other details with respect to such bonds and the payment thereof, approving other documents relating to such bonds and providing the effective date of the resolution. Whereas Weld County School District Number 6, Weld County, Colorado, is duly organized in validity existing school district, political subdivision, and body cooperate with the state of Colorado. And whereas pursuant to bond and the supplemental act, as such terms and other capitalized terms used but not defined in these preambles are defined in the section hereof entitled definitions, the district is authorized to issue general obligation bonds for the various purposes subject to obtaining voter approval of a ballot issue authorizing such bonds. And whereas an election on November 5th, 2019, a majority of the eligible voters of the district voting on the following ballot issue voted in favor thereof, shall Weld County School District 6, Number 6 debt be increased by up to $395 million with the maximum repayment cost of $771 million, and shall district taxes be increased by up to $34.5 million annually to create healthy and safe learning spaces for students, address significant capacity issues, plan for the projected student growth, and create learning spaces to enhance colleges and career readiness by constructing and equipping a new high school to replace the current Greeley West High School, building and improving career and technical educational sites, constructing and equipping a new K-8 school, making improvements and additions to renovate, update, and increase capacity at selected K-8 schools, constructing and equipping a new school to replace the current Madison Elementary School, repairing and renovating aging facilities, including charter schools, making safety and security improvements to existing schools, including charter schools, and otherwise acquiring, constructing, improving, equipping, and furnishing district buildings and other property by issuance and payment of general obligation bonds or other multiple fiscal year obligations, which may be used as matching monies for financial assistance from the state under the Building Excellent Schools Today Act, which debt shall bear interest, mature, be subject to redemption with or without premium, and be issued, dated, and sold at such a time or times at such prices at or above or below par, in such a manner and containing such terms not inconsistent herewith as the Board of Education may determine, shall ad valorem property taxes be levied in any year without limitation as to the rate and in an amount sufficient to pay the principal of premium, if any, and interest on such debt, and to fund any reserves for the payment thereof, and shall any limitations on the district's debt limit be weakened up to 6% of the actual value of the district's taxable property to permit the issuance of such bonds. Whereas the returns of the election were duly canvassed and the results therefore duly declared. And whereas on January 30th, 2020, the district issued its general obligation bond series 2020 in the aggregate principal amount of $250 million pursuant to the authorization provided by voter approval of the ballot issue of the election. Whereas the Board of Education of District has determined it is in the best interest of the district and its residents to issue, subject to the section hereof entitled Delegation and Parameters of Weld County School District Number 6, Weld County, Colorado, General Obligation Bond Series 2021 for the purpose of providing funds for the project, and whereas no member of the board has potential conflict of interest in connection with the authorization, issuance, sale, or use of proceeds of the bonds, and whereas the resolution is being adopted to authorize the issuance, sale, and delivery of the bonds, and to provide the details and the payment for the bonds. Resolved, adopted, and approved on the date set forth in the certification attached hereto.
Thank you, Mr. Hafley. That was quite the resolution. Dr. Pilch, before we open this up for comment for board members, is there anything you would like to tell us or the public?
Well, I will just say that we were fortunate to have a very favorable bond letting in the first round that resulted in bond proceeds that have allowed us to extend our projects more than we had initially hoped. We hope to have a favorable letting in this next round of bonds, and I think the resolution said plenty. So thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments from board members? As you said, I think the resolution said plenty. Oh, sorry. No, it did not. Mr. Hafley.
You know what? I need to thank all the people who worked so diligently on getting the bond passed. And we can't thank our voters enough for their incredible trust in us. And it's really, really important that we follow through with the transparency that we've discussed over and over again. And we continue to do that with our bond committee. And I'm just gratefully appreciative of all the things that those people did for us.
Thank you, Mr. Hafley. Thanks for those comments.
I have one thing.
Oh, sorry. It's hard to see you, Mr. Talley.
First, John, could you read that one more time? I didn't quite hear the whole thing.
1 second, I'll start again. Whereas.
No, I want to say thank you for the voters. You know, oftentimes we hear the word transparency and equity and inclusion and all that stuff. And sometimes they just come across as buzzwords and there's no meaning behind them. And people just sort of use them in their mission statements and all of that. Well, here at District 6, I think that we have shown the voters that we value those words and that those words have meaning. You look at the plans for the usage of the bond, and they have been very thorough and very fair. And I'm just very proud of the voters for putting their trust in the district, and the district is pulling through. So pretty proud to be a part of this community.
Thank you, Mr. Talley, and thank you for your service. Any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none. Ms. Crane, will you give us a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Hafley?
Aye.
Mrs. Mash?
Aye.
Mr. Mathews?
Aye.
Mrs. Mueller? Aye. Ms. Pappas?
Aye.
Mrs. Solis? Mr. Talley?
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you, Ms. Crane. Our final item is a resolution to accept bids and contracts and other operations, and this is an action item that needs a motion.
I move that the Board of Education of Greeley-Evans School District 6 approves the resolution to accept bids, contracts, and other operations as presented.
Second.
Thank you both. Before we go any further, Ms. Pappas, would you be so kind as to read this resolution?
I will. Resolution to accept bids, contracts, and other operations. Whereas the Board of Education may decide that it will not schedule any public board meetings after June 14th until August 9th, 2021. And whereas there may be contracts that require approval during this time in order to maintain business operations, now therefore be it resolved that the superintendent or designee is authorized to accept bids and authorize construction, maintenance, operational, and/or bond contracts after the last board meeting in June, subject to the following conditions. All construction, maintenance, operational, and/or bond project contracts shall be within the amounts budgeted for in the capital reserve and bond projects as shown within the 2021-22 capital reserve budget and the facilities master plan for which district funds are available. All such construction, maintenance, operational, and/or bond contracts will be awarded to the lowest responsible bidder or most qualified respondent. In the event that there are any questions concerning any construction, maintenance, operational, and/or bond project contracts to be approved after the last board meeting in June, the president of the board will be asked to convene a special board meeting to address questions and/or concerns. All such construction, maintenance, operational, and/or bond project contracts approved after the last board meeting in June will be ratified and confirmed by the Board of Education at the first board meeting in August 2021. Adopted and approved this 14th day of June 2021. Weld County School District 6, Michael Mathews, President, Board of Education.
Thank you, Ms. Pappas. A little bit easier job than Mr. Hafley had,
Yeah.
but well done.
Thank goodness.
Dr. Pilch, is there anything we need to know about this one before we open this up for comments from board members?
No, I think the resolution is thorough. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pilch. Any questions or comments on this resolution? Seeing none, Ms. Green, will you give us a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Hafley?
Aye.
Mrs. Mash?
Aye.
Mr. Mathews?
Aye.
Mrs. Mueller?
Aye.
Ms. Pappas?
Aye.
Mrs. Solis? Mr. Talley?
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you, Ms. Crane. We do have one final item, but I don't think we have anybody signed up to speak to us on non-agenda items, do we?
That's correct.
All right. Well, that concludes our meeting for tonight and our meetings for the 2020-2021 school year. And we're excited to make it to this point. I see Miss Annette clapping. We all are very excited to get to this point in the school year, and hopefully for board members and administrators, I hope our teachers and students as well are getting some well-earned rest this summer. So this board meeting is adjourned.